Welcome to the Insomnia Project. Sit back, relax, and listen as we talk about the mundane. One thing that we try to deliver is a conversation that will be less than fascinating so that you can just feel free to drift off. Thank you for joining us. We hope you will listen and sleep. I'm your host, Marco Timpano. Follow us on Twitter at Listen and Sleep. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes, Stitcher, Radio Public, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen. I'm thrilled to have in the studio today a dear friend, Kerry Griffin. Welcome to the Insomnia Project.
Thank you, Marco. I'm thrilled to be here, too. And I love that intro. I've been guests on other podcasts and shows, and there was always so much pressure to be fascinating and wild and crazy. Now it's great. We can be mundane and boring.
Exactly.
I love it.
The thing is, it's never about being boring.
Right, not trying to be boring, no.
Because, okay, so for example, that brings me to the Pet Shop Boys, Being Boring. You know that song?
No, I don't actually. I don't remember that song.
Called We Were Never Meant to Being Boring, something like that.
I only remember West End Girls. That was the Pet Shop Boys, right?
It was, and it was a big hit in the UK months and months prior.
Before it broke here, yeah.
It was a very interesting thing. So it's never about being boring, because I found that when I tried to be boring, it sounded very disingenuous and just didn't work.
Right.
And so it's all about just having a calm conversation and not getting too excited. One of our listeners put it like two friends sitting by a fire with hot cocoa in their hand and their feet up and just having a conversation. Or scotch.
I was going to say, can I have a whiskey or a scotch?
What's your preference?
It would be, I just started drinking whiskey and scotch. And again, I don't even know the difference, I will freely admit. So I just sample things. I guess I like scotch. You
know, a lot of scotch drinkers are like pulling their hair out right now.
I'm sure they are. I'm infuriating people.
I like bourbon.
Oh, okay.
Because bourbon has a bit of sweetness to it.
Now, is Jack Daniels? Jack Daniels is a whiskey.
Oh,
I know. I'm learning here.
Jack Daniels is a sour mash.
Oh.
So it uses, if I'm not mistaken, corn.
I think you're right.
Whereas bourbon is bourbon. It's a different kind of sour mash. Yeah, so it's a different end.
Okay.
You know, purists might say, well, bourbon is from Kentucky.
Yes.
And in fact, I had a friend from Louisville, and she's like, no, if it's not from Kentucky, it's not bourbon.
Okay.
And Jack Daniels.
Tennessee.
So there you go.
Because I love, this is separate. I know it's not whiskey or it's not scotch, but I love the Jack Daniels honey. They have a honey-flavored Jack Daniels, which I love. But I also love, Jameson or what have you, a Johnny Walker.
Then how do you feel about hot toddies with honey in it?
See, I don't know that I've ever actually had a real hot toddy. I don't know. Like, I know the term, and some people have said, here's a hot toddy, but I think people call any hot alcoholic drink a hot. So what is actually in a real hot toddy?
Okay, that's a great question, and I'll probably get it wrong. But this is how I would do a hot toddy.
Fair
You're
enough.
like, let's have a hot toddy.
Yes.
I would warm up water on a kettle, like as if I was making tea. And then I would get a dark liquor, like a scotch, a whiskey, a bourbon.
Sure.
I'd put 1.25 ounces of that in maybe 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces of hot water.
Okay.
With a bit of honey. Stir that up. There you go.
Great. Yeah.
If you don't like honey, take the honey away and just make it hot. I would make it in a snifter. In fact, I think that's too much. That might be too much. If you're making it in a snifter, I would reduce the amount of water.
Right.
If you're making it in a cup, like a mug, then that would be the right. You could also put lemon in it.
Sure.
If you're not feeling well, if you have like a flu, warming up milk and putting brandy in it with a bit of honey is fantastic. So there you go. So that's my take on hot toddies. I'm sure I'll look it up and that's not
it's completely wrong.
Yeah.
No. I feel like hot toddy is just a term that's been thrown around my whole life, and I really have no idea what an official one is, but I'm all game.
What about mulled wine?
Again, I've heard it, is that the one that they order in It's a Wonderful Life? Do you know It's a Wonderful Life, the movie? Clarence orders a drink at the bar, and of course he's from 100 years ago or whatever it is, and I think it's a mulled wine, but I could be wrong. Again, my facts are probably off like yours. It's a strange drink like that. But I don't know what mulled wine is exactly either. It
kills me because I did It's a Wonderful Life, the radio play in Prince George last year around this time. And I feel like it was a punch of some sort because he mentions it and it's like, oh, that's an old drink. But
Anyways.
For me, mulled wine is the inverse of sangria. So sangria, which is a summer drink for me, right?
Yes.
Now, they're not from the same place. They're not people, once again, are going to be like, what is he talking about? But if you think about it, sangria uses fresh fruit, peaches.
Right.
It's cold, ice, syrups and all that. It's a great summer drink.
And sangria is wine and juice, is it? Or is it
wine,
what's
juice,
wine
sometimes simple syrup and actual fruit juice and fruits, pieces of chunks of fruit.
I can picture that.
Mulled wine, you take the wine and rather than using fruits, or fruit I should say, you used cinnamon and spice and you warm it up and you thicken the wine by boiling it. Now you could use cranberries or certain winter fruits, figs and whatnot to really spice up your mulled wine. But for me, it's kind of like summer you have sangria, winter
you have mulled wine.
If that's your thing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Again, sangria I've tried. I don't think I'd rather just have straight wine, I think. But the mulled wine, the hot drinks, I guess I'm not a big, other than coffee, I'm not a big hot drinker.
What's your coffee of choice? If you were to like...
I'm so boring. It's just plain old coffee. Like, I'm not a connoisseur. At home, I honestly buy whatever's on sale. Okay. It's generally either like Maxwell House or Folgers, that kind of stuff. I don't get any fancy roasts. If I'm out, I'll hit a Starbucks if there's one, but I'm not above a Tim Hortons if that's what's there. It's about convenience. It's about getting coffee inside me. That is really the important thing. It's not about the flavor in general.
The fuel you need.
It is the fuel I need, exactly.
For our listeners who don't live in Canada, Kerry mentions Tim Hortons, it's a chain of coffee, just regular coffee that you can get that you find all across Canada.
It's a Canadian institution, really.
Pretty much.
It is.
Pretty much. It's where the term double-double was born, which would be a coffee with 2 creams. You just say, I'll have it double-double.
I find it fascinating that that's only a Canadian thing.
Yeah.
Like I remember learning that when I was a kid or younger. Yeah. And going, why? What else would you call it? I don't know.
It's a good question. And I bet a lot of other countries, and if you are from a country where you use terms that are specific to your nation when it comes to food, I would love it if you let us know.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. What are some specific terms? Yeah.
I should mention Kerry. Kerry is one of the most talented improvisers in Canada, in my opinion.
Thank you, Marco.
And that's how I met and
it's true.
Became friends with Kerry. And Kerry, you're one of my favorite people to do improv with.
Oh, thank you, Marco. We haven't done it in so many years. Literally haven't.
Some of my best scenes or some of my best improv work was with you. So
thank you.
I hold great fondness in my heart when people mention your name. But we also share, besides a love for improv, which we may come back to, is both of us studied to deal cards at a casino.
Yes, we were trained croupiers.
If you would, yeah.
Yes, which is the term. I don't even know what that term means. I mean, it means blackjack dealer as far as I know, or card dealer. Does a croupier applies to more games than just blackjack, am I right?
I don't know. It's a French term. I think you've got it as a croupier, you're crouping the yays on the table.
Oh, of course, yes. So the yays. Yes. Yeah, when I was just starting out in the acting biz, of course, you need other jobs to sustain yourself. And I remember this was before, this would have been in the 90s, I think, and it was before the permanent casinos in our area here opened up. And I saw an ad in the paper of blackjack dealer, we train, da-da-da-da. And I was like, hey, that would be a cool part-time job.
Sure.
So, I took a course. And I remember, I don't know where you trained, but I took a course that a young guy, he was maybe my age, maybe even younger. I was in my early to mid-20s. And he just did it like out of his studio apartment. He built his own tables, and he just trained people how to deal blackjack. It was very odd. And you had to, practice shuffling because you had to do shuffling so precise and so perfect. And you would then take a test to see if you passed. And then it was about speed too. You had to really...
And accuracy where you place the cards.
Yes.
Did you deal poker or blackjack?
Just blackjack when
Like me.
Yeah, I only did blackjack. They brought poker into the charity casinos
later on.
Well, I was there, but I never became a poker dealer.
I loved chipping out, so giving people the chips, and using my fingers to do that. I hated doing the math.
Oh, exactly, because you had to do it instantly.
Yeah.
And especially if it was like a blackjack, which pays like an odd number. It's not like just match their bet. It pays like 2.5 to 1 or whatever the heck it was. So you had to look at their bet and immediately go, oh, here's what I owe them. And it was so easy to screw up.
Sure.
Like, I'm sure I made horrible mistakes somewhere along the line. The wrong chip, the wrong amount, whatever it was. I mean, if you did something, an error that was against a player, they'd let you know right away. But if you did something against the house, nobody would say a word, of course. They'd be like, this
play at that guy's table.
Exactly. He's paying out,
Has that skill as a dealer made you a better player?
Oh, yes. Yes, because I learned the game. And I mean, I still I'm not saying I'm an expert at it. You can never be. And it's obviously the odds are still in the house's favor.
Of course.
But as you know, when you learn, it was mainly watching everybody else play. And there are quote-unquote rules for playing blackjack, like you're supposed to hit on, if the dealer's showing this and you're showing this, you're supposed to hit or you're supposed to stand or whatever.
Sure.
And especially if you're, of course, that last person, the anchor, the person playing at the end of the table, because the dealer goes after you so you have to sometimes take one for the team, as it were, and take a card when you don't really want to because based on what's come out, it looks like that's going to help the dealer bust or whatever it is. So yeah, I think I'm more aware of supposedly how to play properly to best your odds to win,
Yes. And is that your best game, or is that your favorite game to play in a casino?
Yes, I think it's my favorite game to play. I do play poker as well, but I've never played poker in a casino. I play poker at home with friends.
Sure.
And I think I don't go to casinos that much.
Right.
And
I'm making you sound like a gambler.
Really don't gamble that much.
You can find Kerry at the local casino with a scotch in his hand.
But I find the idea of playing poker in a casino intimidating. Not that I don't want to someday, but the idea of going in and I don't 100% know how the setup works of finding your table and then playing with a bunch of people I don't know. So blackjack is generally my favored game because I know, I understand it and I know how to play it.
And what are your rules when you play? We know the house rules, but do you have a specific thing where you're like, I'll stay on a 17 or...
Oh, yeah. No, I try to play by the book rules.
Okay.
Unless, again, you watch what's come out, right? So if there's been a bunch of face cards come out, then you're expecting low cards. So that might change. I will do that and go, oh, there's been 6 face cards in a row. It's going to be a low one. So if I'm on a 15 or 16, maybe I'll hit or whatever. I might take one to hope that the dealer will then get something that'll bust him. But poker I find way more fascinating because, of course, you're more playing the other person than you are playing the cards.
Right.
So it's a whole psychological thing, whereas blackjack is just much more a robotic thing. I think you can just play by the odds of the cards that are coming.
Have you ever played War at a casino?
No.
Oh, it's so great.
You mean the kids'
card game?
War?
Yeah, where you're like, both of you just flash your card that you have in your hand, and whoever's is higher wins.
Takes it.
It's so great.
But to me, there's zero skill in that, right?
There's no skill whatsoever.
It's all the odds of where the cards are.
Yeah.
So do you just play head-to-head against somebody, or how does it work?
The dealer. It's you and the dealer play, and you've got your chips, and so you have to put your chips each hand.
That's funny.
You just play, and then when you hit war, I think you have to bet more, and then it's like who's going to win the war. Yeah. So it's
that's interesting, and I kind of like that because as much as I love gambling, it is like I'm not a person who's built for it. Like high stakes gambling would make me have a heart attack. I think unless I was rich, knock wood, but because $10 still feels important to me. I'm like I want to win this. So a game like that where there's zero skill, I think I would love because it takes the pressure off. It's just I'm just playing, and if I win, I win. It's like playing the lottery.
That's like me. I don't like to gamble much, in large amounts. And I went to a roulette table, and I love roulette.
Yeah.
At a casino off the strip in Vegas. Okay. So it was kind of like happy hour, and you could bet. Right. I think it was like you just had to have $5 on the table, right? So it was a $5 minimum. Yeah. And so I would be putting lots of 25-cent pieces all over. And I was accumulating money, and I was like, I'm really enjoying this. I didn't spend very much at the end of the day. We went the next day, and I was doing really well. And I didn't realize that it wasn't during the happy hour, or on Saturdays they don't do that. So I was putting quite a bit of money on the table, but thinking it was like...
It was the low.
It was the low, right? And then she's like, okay. And I was like, so I was like, oh, how much did I lose there? And she's like, oh, you had $40 on the table. I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, you had 40, right? I'm like, but each piece is 25. She's like, no, each piece is $1. I'm like,
God.
No, right? So it was one of those things where it was like, I'm going to quit while I'm ahead.
Yeah.
Speaking of rules, we mentioned, I just like my segue.
That was a lovely segue.
What are your favorite improv rules? And I'll give you a second to think of that. Or what are the improv rules that you adhere to?
Right.
For our listeners who are saying, what is improv? Improv or improvisation is a style of theater or an art form where actors will perform without a script, oftentimes eliciting ask-fors or suggestions from the audience, which they will base their scene on. And so they'll just make everything up ad hoc or improvised on stage. And a lot of improv adheres to certain rules. Some improv doesn't require rules. A lot of improv that people are aware of is comedic. But there's a lot of improv which is not comedic, which is dramatic or business or whatnot. Are there rules or are there things that you enjoy doing when you're improvising?
Sure, yeah. I also like, and not to nitpick about this, but I like saying, because rules always sound so concrete. And of course, part of the joy of improv is that you can do anything. Like there's no script, so you can do whatever you want. So I like to think of them less as rules and more as like guidelines to help lead you to success. Like your chances of doing well are better if you follow these quote-unquote rules.
Does sound very rigid.
Yes.
Suggestions or...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Guidelines. The ones, or something that comes to mind is of course, in improv, you're making stuff up, as you said, so it's really important for the performers to get on the same page and in agreement with what's going on and what's happening. So I just love the idea that anything your scene partner says is true, 100% true.
Love it.
And then if that's true, what else is true? Like, so how can you add to that and build on that and go, yeah, if they say they love horses, great, then they must also love cows too and pigs, and they've got a whole menagerie of animals in their backyard, whatever it is. And I think the other interesting part of that is that, because in improv, as you know, we talk about the whole building block of improv is yes and, is saying yes to things. But it's more agreeing with things than saying yes, in that you can agree with things by saying no to them in that sense. So if somebody comes into a scene and says, whatever, I'm stealing all your money and taking your house, give me your keys, like, I'm going to say no, probably. I'm going to be like, no, I'm not going to let you. But we're in agreement about what we're dealing with and what's going on. So I love...
because so many people think yes and is actually physically saying the word yes.
Yeah.
But it's about agreement.
It is.
And using the and, which is building upon the scene.
Adding to it, exactly. Yeah. And I think for beginners, we do push them. You know, I teach a lot, and I teach brand new people, and you do start with just say yes, because it's so natural for people to want to say no to things. I'm your mother. No, you're not. And it's like, now we're just arguing about who we are even. So you do have to train. It's amazing as humans, I think our natural instinct is more to say no to things, whether that's fear or uncertainty or control. Like that's what I see with a lot of beginners or people just starting out improv. It's so hard. Just the idea of, wait, I can't control what's going to happen or where it's going to go or what. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, that's the whole point. Which is strange because that's what life is, right?
It's true.
Not to get too deep. But
no, it's perfectly fine to get
We
deep.
don't have a plan in our lives. We don't know what's going to happen the next day, the next moment. So we're improvising through life. So when you tell somebody to improvise on stage, it's like, what? People find it so hard.
Yeah, I have no one to fall back on other than myself and the person I'm in. I don't have words written for me.
Yeah. The other thing I love, the rule or the way I push people, I think, when I teach lately, and try to do this too, is just the idea of matching somebody. Like I think, again, our instinct is to sometimes counter. Like, of course, conflict in a scene is important, but you see 90% of the time someone's natural instinct is whatever the other person starts with. So they say... whatever, I'm going to cook dinner, and the other person will be like, no, I'm going to cook dinner, and suddenly we're fighting about who's cooking dinner, which could be a fun scene, but as opposed to, I'm just going to match you, great, I'll cook dinner with you, or somebody does something physical, and great, just match their emotion, we're both sad, we're both happy, just be on the same page and explore it together. So I love just starting and seeing students just start a scene from they don't even know what it's going to be yet. Somebody just makes a small choice, like, yeah, they're crying, and the other person just matches them. So you got 2 crying people. Great. Let's see what they're crying about. Who knows? So just that idea of being connected to somebody and being on that same page and starting together on something is usually a wonderful place to begin.
Not to reveal any secrets you may have, but where do you draw names from when you're improvising? So if you have someone in the scene who like you need to bestow a name,
like character names,
a character name, or a place, a street name, or whatnot, where do you draw from?
That's interesting. 2 things, well, actually 3 things come to mind.
Oh, I love it.
First is
Folks, write this down because it's very key to...
First, I will have go-tos that for some reason are the name I always like. And it'll change. For a few weeks, I'll call everybody Kyle. And then for a few weeks, it'll be Steve.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's Franklin and Margaret. I don't know why.
That's funny.
Those are my names.
Yeah. Franklin comes up in mine a lot, too. Maybe that's an interesting one.
I don't know a Franklin, but I imagine... Franklins, if you're a Franklin listening, I imagine they're really cool, lovely people.
Yeah, you're right. They do sound calm. They sound caring. Then, if I'm on the ball with it, I will pull names from my real life, not anybody I'm good friends with currently or anything.
Sure.
But I will pull out names of people I went to grade school with or something. I used to do that at Second City a lot if I had to name somebody in a scene, and especially. I would call people Miguel Costas, because I went to school with a guy named Miguel Costas.
Shout out to Miguel.
Yeah, exactly. Or Ivan Vukovic or whatever, which were all people I went to school with. And then, there was a third thing I was going to say, and now I can't
While you're thinking, I'll tell you one of the
Yes.
techniques I like to do is if I'm improvising not in my hometown, I'll use street names in my whole hometown. So I'll say, like, Dr. Eglinton is here, Mr. Cothra's here, Miss Sororin, welcome or whatnot, right?
Yeah. The other thing I just remembered is sometimes I will make up a name and not I will literally just open my, almost like gibberish. Like I will just say a phrase, or not a phrase, but a part of a word, and then see what the next half is. So I'll call somebody Flognork or whatever. And often it's strange, but it gets to some interesting places. Yeah.
I once did a scene with Lucy Evely.
Yes.
Who was a guest on this show. And we were doing a corporate thing, and I talked about a dog named Muffin. In the scene. So I was like, Muffin this, Muffin that. And then we got to sit on the side while our colleague was introducing a new scene. And I took a swig of water, and she whispers to me, I had a dog named Muffin. And I laughed so hard that I spit my entire glass mouthful of water right into her face. So much so that it was dripping from her chin and her nose as we were about to do the next scene, dressed in corporate wear in front of corporate clients. I'll never forget that moment.
That's funny. Yeah, names are interesting. Mm-hmm. And my problem, I don't know if you find this on stage, I do this all the time. I'll call somebody a name, 10 seconds later, I've completely forgotten what name I called them. So I either call them accidentally by a different name, or I just hold off on calling them any name.
Speaking of names, you have a really cool last name. You have a cool first name, but your last name is one of those, you hear certain names and you're like, there's no mistaking. That's a cool last name.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Griffin, I do like it. Yeah. And it's interesting because it's more common than you realize. But it is, and it's a first name too. I've known people I've had friends who named their kids Griffin. It's an interesting name. I like it because it brings to mind so many things. There's mythological creatures. There's, I guess there's, Merv Griffin or famous people that have had it. I once dated a woman with the same last name as me.
Oh, wow.
So that was, our first date was spent making sure we weren't related, basically.
Fair enough, yes.
Our dads actually had the exact same name.
Oh, wow.
And both our dads, any Family Guy fans out there, are Peter Griffin.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, my dad is Peter Griffin. I have an aunt named Lois Griffin, who is the mother on Family Guy. I don't think we have any Bryans or anything in the family, but yes, big Family Guy references there. I don't know if you know, I have 2 middle names, but one of them is quite unique too.
Oh, I'd love to hear it if you don't mind sharing it.
I don't mind at all. My full name.
Because I won't share my middle name.
No, you won't. I want to
it.
press, but I'll let it go. My full name is Kerry Glenn Moorcroft Griffin.
Oh, my goodness. It sounds like a Harry Potter character.
It really does. It really does.
What's that old English? Like, that's Amazing name.
I love it, yeah, because it's so unique, and it does sound, yes, I sound much more pompous than I am. The strange part is nobody in our family seems to know quite where it came from. It's a family name in that my father and my grandfather both have Moorcroft as a third name as well. As far as we know, it started with my grandfather. Nobody before him seems to have it, but we can't figure, nobody knows where it came from. I don't know why my grandfather's passed away now, but I don't know why he didn't know why his parents named him that. The only thing we came up with was that we assume it was a tribute to somebody's maiden name in the family, and his mother or grandmother's maiden name was Moore.
Okay.
So we think it was somehow derived from Moore. Maybe there was a Croft. We don't know.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The mysterious middle name.
Exactly.
Are you the first Kerry Griffin, or are you Kerry Griffin the second?
I'm the first.
Kerry
first. Griffin, yes.
Just to make it sound even more.
Exactly. Kerry Glenn Moorcroft Griffin the first. Moorcroft. It's funny because I use the name Moorcroft. No, I don't use it much when I improvise, but I use it in other things. If I'm writing things or something, I'll just throw in the name Moorcroft.
I would introduce myself as
it's
that.
Moorcroft, yes.
I should mention to our listeners, because I'm sure some are going to be like, what is your middle name? My middle name is Salvatore, which means savior. Sal would be Sal or Sam is the sort of diminutive of the name in English. And it was my grandfather's name, and I was supposed to be named that.
Right.
But my mom's like, no way. And so there was a bit of friction in the family because of that. But I'm not a Sal. I'm not a Sally. I'm not a Sam. So anyways.
That's funny. Now, did your parents do this? Because my parents always told me if I was born a girl, I was going to be Melanie.
Oh.
Do you know what your female name would have been? Or do you have any idea?
I'm going to I know what the other names my mom liked. So she liked Lloyd.
Oh, Lloyd.
Or Lance.
Oh, my gosh.
It was either Lloyd or Floyd, I can't remember, but I think it was Lloyd and Lance were the names.
So
she
interesting.
I don't know. It's like, what a departure. And then she's like, no, we'll go with Marco. So I was like, all right.
That's funny. It always struck me, I was Kerry as a boy, Melanie as a girl. But it's interesting because Kerry, most people think Kerry is more of a female name than a male name. So I don't know why Kerry would have worked on either side. Right. But they only liked Kerry as a boy's name.
My mom liked Lisa Marie, so I would have been Lisa Marie.
Lisa Marie, that's great.
Put a wig on me. That's great. Lisa Marie. Kerry Glenn Moorcroft Griffin.
Yes, correct.
Thank you so much for being a part of this episode of the Insomnia Project.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. It's been great fun, Marco.
As always, the Insomnia Project is produced by Drumcast Productions, and this episode was recorded in our home studios in Toronto, Canada. Until next time.